All right. Hi, everyone, and welcome to At the Edge, a series where we are going to be discussing what's possible. I'm your host, Valerie, and I am a holistic health and mindset coach and the founder of Intrepid Wellness and Club Phoenix. I lead people in transformational breakthroughs in health and personal potential. So joining me today is my co-host, Kris McDaniel, and together we're diving deep into the realms of personal growth, mindset, and the art of overcoming obstacles. Kris is a personal development coach as well, with a knack for unlocking potential and brings a wealth of knowledge and unyielding passion for pushing the boundaries of self-improvement. We're starting this show at the edge as a call to the outliers, the questioners, the status quo disruptors. It's for those who find themselves at the fringes, not because they've lost their way, but because they've chosen the path less traveled. We're really happy that you're joining us as we explore the edges of our capabilities and share our stories, strategies, and insights that will empower you to step into your greatness. So whether you're here to sharpen your mind or enhance your performance or elevate your awareness, you are in the right place. So let's get right into it. Let's start by talking a little bit about our own journeys and why we want to call this show At the Edge. So Kris, just tell me a little bit about yourself and your experiences in brief and what being at the edge has meant to you, what you have learned at the edge.
So for me, being at the edge personally means at the edges of like society because, growing up, I was always like, I was a little bit more sensitive than most kids. So because of it, I got pushed a little bit more to the side. I grew up poor, so I saw things a little bit differently than a lot of people. And so it's almost given me an outside perspective to observe how people interact with each other and how I interact with people. As I was saying earlier, with those like tendencies that I have, I try to like do my best to mirror people. And through having such a diverse, like, I guess growing up, I met a bunch of different people because I was never really stuck into one little friend group. It gave me the ability to almost mirror multiple different personalities and seeing how they interact with me and how those interactions like work with any other people. That has helped me definitely see on a more holistic level how society works, why people develop certain problems, why certain like solutions don't work for other people, and what I can do to what's like a zero to hero pipeline to see like where everyone, the common place of where everyone starts in their struggle, and then where everyone wants to be, and how we can give people the ability to just get there as fast as possible, as cheaply as possible, as easily as possible. And so that's something that being at the edge of society has done for me. It's helped me a lot, just getting a big perspective on it.
So, what I hear is that you, um, because you've had experience as pretty much like an outlier and someone who hasn't had a lot of resources, you've done the personal work that it takes to find your own way. And so you're here to help people do that as well. I also have had experiences as being an outlier. I think it comes from as a first generation Chinese American in a very white neighborhood as a very young child and always questioning, like, why do people do the things they do? Why do they say the things that they say? Because a lot of the times what my peers were going through was not what I was going through.
Mhm.
A lot of times what customs people were following, I had even not even had a context for it. So I kind of had to find my way into what's going to be normal and what's going to be accepted behavior wise. And then also what's dysfunctional and that I don't need to do. And I think, because I've grown up with that kind of outsider perspective, I've been able to kind of condense what I think is the real key to freedom. That's how I got to this at the edge place and why I think it's important to push ourselves to an edge to grow continuously.
uh, Pushing yourself intentionally, I think, is a really good thing to do. Is A lot of people, the majority actually, they sit inside, of society. They're not actually on the edge, and a lot of times the people that are on the edge are forced out there. But I think it does give us an advantage, and so because we have a different perspective, I think that saying that people need to push themselves to the edge sometimes. It's like you want to take a step back so that you can gain that perspective because I think it's healthy for everybody.
Yeah, and you see a lot of people that are high performers. They didn't get there because they thought like everyone else. They
Mm-hmm.
got there because they saw potential in themselves or they saw that something was off and they sought to find out what that was.
Yeah, I mean, that's why they always say it's like it's lonely at the top, because whenever you start really delving into your craft and who you are as a person, you become very niche, like as a person, not even just in an industry, just as a person, you have all these things that you're into, all these things that you want to get good at, and even things that you start to love more and more deeply than other people will, and I think that naturally is going to put you, at the edge because you are, now separating yourself from your peers, not necessarily because you're better than them, but because you have taken a path that is your path.
Let's kind of go into a little bit more about this personal development and how we got here as personal development coaches. We've both had very different paths to this drive, this passion to help other people change their mindset, change their life. So tell me a little bit about how it is that you came to want to pursue this.
Like I said, I was always really sensitive as a kid, and so that doesn't just mean like emotionally, prone to things like anger and sadness. It also meant like sensitive in terms of like empathy. I had a lot of empathy for other people. So, if somebody started crying, it'd make me want to cry. If somebody needed some help, it made me, even if I wasn't in a position necessarily to be a leader, I immediately became that protective person, because I couldn't stand the thought of someone feeling the way that I felt because obviously when I felt bad, I felt really bad. And I think, maybe in a way I projected that onto other people. As a kid, I went through a lot of issues mentally and emotionally just due to, neglect, basically. My dad and my mom were separated. They both like lived in bars. My mom was an alcohol. They were both alcoholics, but my mom was the parent that I normally was with, and she wasn't around that often, and so I ended up basically by myself, and from the beginning felt like I was pushed off to the side. And I think that obviously caused me a lot of pain, especially as a small sensitive person. It made me want people to be included, and so what I did was I flocked to my friends and I started caring very, very, very deeply about my friends. And I also watched, it's funny, but I watched a lot of Dragon Ball Z growing up, and that is one of the things that gave me like, that motivation. I'm like 6 years old or something, but that was my guiding factor at the time. It's like watching people go through pain and struggle, and and just being so, on the verge of dying basically, and then having that undying willpower to get back up and continue moving, continue fighting, and then unlocking newer and newer levels of power. And like, so for me, it was like it wasn't just about surviving, it was also about going to newer levels, but like how those characters did. And so whenever I was younger, I had these moments where I would like, I guess my brain naturally separated uh those traumas from myself. And so my brain didn't register my anger issues because when I was younger, anger was like a really big thing for me. But my brain separated those anger issues from me, and so I felt like it was a thing that was, like almost possessing me, and not necessarily a characteristic that I myself had. And because of that, that started this really long journey of like, meditation and almost personifying and trying to communicate with this thing, trying to fight with this thing in me that was just like a negativity that I didn't feel like I wanted. And through years of like basically daily meditation, trying to get this thing out of my system because I didn't know anything about therapy. I didn't know anything about psychology. The only thing we grew up on was religion and ghosts and demons and spirits and angels, all those kinds of stuff. So I didn't know anything about getting help. I didn't know that this was trauma. I didn't know what it was. I genuinely thought that like something got me. So whenever I, finally conquered that feeling, it was almost like I remember there was this moment where like that my friend was teaching me how to fix my computer. And we used to have those big tower like desktops or whatever. And when I opened it up, I started realizing like, oh my God, I can actually like tinker with these things, replace these parts, upgrade this, upgrade that. And I had never seen the inside of a computer before, but being walked through it just gave me this aha moment because I was like, this is what I'm doing to my mind. This is the same thing. I'm opening it up and I'm able to put this piece here and upgrade this here and then do this here. And then, after years and years and years of studying, I just found out like there's actually a method that all humans can use to go from being one type of way to being another type of way. And, so finding that out, that's what kickstarted my journey. I think I was like 15 or 16 at the time whenever I like really found out that the mind was adaptable. I looked into like neuroplasticity and all this kinds of stuff. And so that just gave me this hope. And I was like, man, if I can fix myself, dude, I can fix the world. And so, yeah, that's really the big thing that kicked it off for me.
Great. And, you said something about rewiring, and I think that's a really important point because a lot of the time, our mindset and our way of thinking is it's kind of solidified at a very early point in life,
Yeah.
unconsciously. Something bad happens where, oh, it could be anything. Maybe your mom left you at the grocery store or some kind of
Yeah.
like impactful moment, right? Where that was traumatic and you made it mean something about you, and you also developed a response to it that becomes
Yeah.
automatic.
Mhm.
And that the meaning that you might make of it, it carries throughout your entire life. The response that you have to it, it could be physiological too, maybe like having like a panic attack. It could be a physical response as well, and that could also continuously come up throughout life, and so it's impacting our bodies and our minds, and to be able to go and dig deep into there and find out what that is, and to rewire your mind and your body to respond differently, is one of like the first things that, in terms of changing your trajectory, that you could do.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that I heard somewhere, I forgot, I don't know, don't quote me on it. I don't have studies for it, but I remember seeing somewhere that somebody said that like babies from the time they're born to the time where they're about 6 years old are just like recorders. All they're doing is they're not putting their imprint on the world. They're just kind of seeing what the world is. And so they're taking everything in because that's our way of adapting and figuring out, okay, this is kind of how the world works. This is our environment. This is what we need to do. And it kind of shapes who we are. So moments around that time period are very impactful for that reason because it wires us. It's like if you are between the ages of 0 and 6, you're just a baby and like it's always chaos. Your body and your mind are going to respond to thinking it's that the world is like that. The world is chaos, and it takes so long to unlearn that. And it's unfortunate because it's not like you were necessarily in control of your
No,
environment, when you're young.
you're very much not in control of your environment when you're young. And so, parenting styles, they heavily impact how the baby turns out and
Yeah,
how it develops into a full grown person.
yeah,
There's a lot of research that shows that, people who are, have like physical contact with the mother have less anxiety growing up, have less trouble socializing growing up, et cetera. I mean, it goes on and on.
oh yeah,
Right.
yeah. And I've suffered from almost everything you name it. And in my mind, I've suffered from it. I mean, it's just what happens whenever you're pretty much like tossed outside and says, "Don't come back until the street lights come on." And then when it's time to go home, you don't even go home to your mom. You go home to somebody else's mom because you have to stay the night somewhere else because your mom isn't home.
Yeah.
That happened a
Yeah.
lot. Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously that it it's an experience that can make or break you, really. And the more consciousness we put onto it, the more we're aware of the impact of it, then we can do
Yeah.
something about it, right? So
Yeah.
I want to dive a little bit into then the relationship between your journey as an individual, because you are also a tumbling coach.
Hmm.
And
And a part.
how how that has impacted you in terms of developing yourself as a personal development coach. What have you learned through that experience?
Oh yeah, that actually taught me a lot about my mind. Not, I mean, it taught me some stuff about how I can affect the lives of other people, but it also taught me a lot about myself when it came to the business of actually running it. Because when I was first a tumbling coach, I did work up underneath somebody else, and I was not a confident person growing up. I wasn't that extroverted. I didn't like talking to a bunch of people. I remember I used to be scared to like make my own orders at like fast food restaurants, and like I couldn't talk on the phone. I had such an anxiety of people because I was always like the loser, the kid that got bullied. I got bullied all the way up until high school. So, it's weird that I went from being like at the bottom of the social hierarchy to eventually having my own business where I was teaching cheerleader teams. Like it was so strange. So, um going through my mind and having to put myself in the position to be that person who is a coach of, I guess you would look at the social hierarchy above these people, knowing that if I was a few years before, I would be the person that they made fun of. So yeah, something that's taught me about is like it's taught me that you need to be spending more of your time pursuing what you want instead of running away from what you don't want.
Mm.
Because a lot of the times, if you focus on what you do want, your brain is going to ask you, how can I do it? But if you keep running away from it, especially if you're in a position like me where you kind of got thrown into it, you are not going to succeed at all. You're in it now and you have to focus on what you can do. And another thing that it taught me was that the confidence comes after you do it. Like, so for example, this is our first episode here. It may not be the best feeling thing in the world, the most fluid feeling thing in the world, because we're starting off. But it's like once you get through it though, you eventually learn how to do it better and better and better. And then after a few episodes, or for me it was like a few coaching sessions with teams, I realized, oh, I can do this. I made sure that I can do this, and now I'm confident. So now I'm a parkour coach. Because since I moved here, I didn't really have any access to cheer teams. So as a parkour coach, I stepped in, and it was a different demographic. Now it's like younger kids who are like in middle school, mostly boys, and it's a structure that isn't so rigid and strict because it's not competitive. It's like a lot of playfulness and stuff like that I'm not necessarily used to, but going in, I was very confident. As a coach, I was very confident. So that's the biggest thing it taught me, was just that confidence comes after you do something, and that you need to be spending more of your time figuring out how to do it instead of trying to talk yourself out of it.
I also want to go into this because I was a dancer, or I am a dancer, and I've had various stages of relationship with my movement.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, I just really liked dancing. Then it became about, at some point, trying to fit in a little bit and trying to learn the moves that everyone else is learning, or trying to be the best out of everyone else. There was a point in time where that was the main focus for me. And then eventually it became about establishing my own identity as a dancer and finding my own creativity and finding the natural movement within that is intuitive rather than trying to copy someone else,
Yeah.
right? And then there's just been so much of evolution in the way that I relate to my movement. And that has also paralleled with my journey as a personal coach, because it made me realize that it's so important to be able to stand in the power of your unique self-expression.
Yeah. I can see how movement really is good with that.
Yeah. Especially dance, because it all is about creativity, a lot
Exactly.
of it, if you allow it to be, right? Because I remember when I was in a dance studio and one of the instructor was coaching a few of us before going to the actual class. He was teaching us the choreography, but he was also trying to get us to freestyle. And I was with a few other girls, and when he's like, da 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 da, do the freestyle, I didn't have a problem doing it. But then as soon as he pointed the finger at the other girl, she froze. She couldn't do it at all because all she knew was how to copy.
I would freeze too. I understand that.
Right. But there gets to a point where there is freedom. Eventually, you can't just copy, you do and you create. Right. And I think I had this like pivotal moment in my dance career where it no longer became about what everyone else is doing. But as soon as that happened, I realized that I no longer really had an interest in being in the environment that everyone else was doing it
Mhm.
because everyone else was trying to just keep up with each other.
Yeah.
Whereas I just wanted to push the boundaries of what I could do and inspire something within me to create. So, anyway, this just goes, I just wanted to pull out that personal story because I'm sure at some point in your journey with tumbling, you also had some kind of personal epiphany about what you do,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
right?
Once I reached a certain level of like tricking and that more freestyle movement, because tumbling was very rigid. I mean, I liked it. I got, pretty decent at it, but it didn't really feel like me. So whenever I moved into a more personal expressive, movement like parkour or like tricking or something, trying to find a flow and trying to find what I wanted to do and the skills that I wanted to work on versus what just the power skills and the things that everyone was working on that was trendy at the time. Yeah, once I separated from myself from that, it was a very, I mean, you learn a lot about yourself. You start to learn about like what makes you do this, what makes you do that, what makes you want to train, what makes you want to stay away from people, what makes you, why does my body do this every time I do this? Why do I react this way? Like there's so much that you learn, and spending so much time like that, like getting to know your body on that type of level is so, it's almost like hanging out with a friend. It's so strange. It's like, I mean, as you know, as a dancer, it's like whenever you do something, like I know that if I do a certain skill and I don't make it, for example, I know I'm not just gonna break my neck. Like I know that instinctively my body's got me. Like even though I don't know what it's gonna do to save me, it's gonna save me. It's like trusting a friend. Such a freeing feeling.
I mean, speaking of trusting a friend, one of the first times I ever tried to back flip off a ledge was when you told me to do it.
Really?
And I was so scared, but you seemed so confident that I could do it
Oh yeah, no.
that like I just did it. And it wasn't bad. And
Yeah,
I
it's
might have hit my head like the first time, but after that I was fine.
I think that's what's good about like having a coach too, is because sometimes it's hard for us to trust ourselves. So it's
Yeah.
like if you at least have someone to trust until you can trust yourself, it's very good to have that encouragement.
And this is a really good example and a very basic example of why you should surround yourself with people who are more confident in where you want to get
Very good
and
point.
who are slightly better than you,
Yeah,
right?
very good point. But those
Right.
people have to be better than you and supportive of you, because
Yes.
that's something that I've learned about being in LA is like, there's a lot of people that are better than you, because
Yeah.
these people come from all over the world, but they want to be the best at what they do. And sometimes you end up surrounding yourself with these people and they don't want you to be that good. I got stuck in this really weird intermediate area where I wasn't like the best of the best, so that people wanted to come flock to me, but I wasn't the worst of the worst. So I couldn't really hang out with newbies either because I couldn't grow if I was around them. And so I was in this like really by myself zone. I wanted to be around people that were better than me, but they were so doing their own thing and they were doing it at such a high level that it was hard for me to really fit in. That like I said, it's hard for me to hang around beginners because I couldn't grow with them. They couldn't hang around me, I guess, because maybe they couldn't grow with me. And so it was very hard because I was always looking at exactly what people were telling me. Hang out with people who are better than you. And I was like, dude, I'm trying. I'm trying, but I
Yeah.
just can't, like I can't fit in with these people.
I think LA is pretty brutal for that too, because, there are people who are a lot better than you, but it's an environment where it's eat or be eaten. And a lot of the times the people who are better than you, they're still trying to get to the top
Yeah.
and are willing to, I guess, like take advantage of people in order to get there. And it's so you do have to be a little bit careful about who you choose, right? You have
Yeah.
to really know that they have your best interest at heart and they're not just manipulating you or you know.
Exactly. Yeah. Because there are some people I hung around that I still, I don't really talk to that often. But when I think about them, I don't think that they were that kind of people. They were the people that, had LA not been so expensive and I had to be at work all the time, that I would have been able to hang around them more often and they would have made me better people because they were actually like, solid people.
Yeah.
I love them for that.
Oh,
But
definitely.
I was
Yeah, and
just
I
saying,
have those people too.
yeah, I was just saying when you surround yourself with people who are better than you, they have to also be supportive of you. Even if they're not better than you just want to hang around people who are just knowing who you can be.
Yeah, exactly. The people who see your potential and not just where you are at.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good.
Yeah. Another theme that I want to touch upon today is like the the concept of recreating yourself and rebirthing yourself over and over again. And last week when we were kind of warming up for this show, I brought up this quote from an anime that I had watched, and
Oh
it was
yeah,
that
anime.
people who are willing to be reborn as many times as necessary are the strong ones. I actually had to go back and find it.
Oh yeah, what was it from?
Yuri on Ice, which I actually never
Oh yeah,
finished.
you were talking about that one. I remember.
But that quote was just so impactful. I was like, yeah, you have to have ego death.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you
It's
have to be
scary.
willing to have ego death.
It's terrifying. People don't understand how terrifying it is, and I think that's the reason that they avoid it. Um, Whenever I was talking about rebirth, for my personal experience, there was a quote that I heard. It wasn't even a quote, actually. It was a meme. I remember this. It was like um, somebody giving like this like frustrated stare, and it's like whenever you come to a realization that defeats and like it goes back and basically ruins everything you've built yourself on, and now you have to turn around and start over from scratch because you found some new evidence that disproved all of that. Like that happened to me so often. I mean, whenever I would go down this path and I would think I had all the answers and everything was figured out, and then I would come across this book or something and I'd read it and it would just, I mean, it would just it would make everything I believed in before just look so dumb. I was like, I was so wrong about all of that and I never saw it, but this book just, and then you're just left with nothing. Now you're like, everything I can't be that anymore. Yeah, it's very frustrating. Actually, I've been reading this book called Positive Disintegration.
Mhm.
I came across it from a TikTok, and I haven't finished it all the way. I'm only like halfway through. It's actually right here. It's right next to me. But he talks about like these levels that people go through, and I want to say it's around like level. I want to say it's around like level 3 or something like that. And I mean, there's characteristics for each level that you're on, but it's one of those ones where it's a moment where you can't turn back anymore.
Mhm.
And until you reach level 5, you're pretty much in this like hellish purgatory because you know what you're capable of and you know you can become it. And you're so aware of it that you can't go back to being normal. So some people at like, I guess like around level 3 or when they're transitioning, they think maybe I can do this. Maybe a bigger life is for me. Maybe I can do it. And then they hit it and then they come to the conclusion this is not for me, and then they fall back. But then they can fall back because they were never experiencing anything that made them realize, no, I can't fall back. Falling back's not a thing. You get to a point eventually where you do something or you become something or you rebirth yourself enough times where you realized I'm better now than I ever have been. And I know that whenever I had a problem in my past, I got to this point from there. And that was a long, long journey. There's no way I could ever go back to just being a regular person again. And so, life will challenge you, life will push you, life will do everything it can to make you wish, beg, and plead that you could just go back to normal. But anytime you try to settle back for normal, it's almost just as painful sitting and not doing anything with your life because you're so aware of how easy it is to become that best version of yourself. So, yeah, being reborn over and over and over is extremely frustrating. It's extremely depressing and it's really unnerving. That ego death makes people like have panic attacks right off the bat, but it's so worth it whenever you get to a point where you're like, this is me, this is who I am, and I'll never fall back. And every setback is just a minor inconvenience instead of this life-changing journey.
Yeah. I mean, that's so true. And I think I just had one of those last year, like very recently. And it's this is why we're here today. is that I had another ego death that was just waiting to happen. And
Did you feel it
I,
beforehand?
huh?
Did you feel it beforehand?
I kind of like 2023 kind of just really dragged me through the mud.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because this is the year that I got married. This is a year that like a lot of really great things happened, but in the background of it was this like it was torture.
Yeah.
So basically what happened was that I had carved out this life that I thought I was going to have, where I went to school for Ayurveda, like this holistic system of medicine. I went to massage school and also like a holistic thing. And I was like, I'm going to have this clinic. I'm going to help people with their health and help them overcome disease. I was working for my Ayurvedic professors, and it was all like a little pretty little system, right? I had my own office, and I was miserable yet again. I've had these epiphanies in my life where it's like, I'm in the greatest place from the outside. It looks like I'm doing really well, but spiritually, I am like rock bottom. And
It's
it is a dissonance. It's a weird dissonance because it's like, oh, I should be happy, but I'm really at odds with who I am inside. There's a lack of integrity here where I'm letting something happen that I don't agree with.
Do you think it was because you felt like you could do more than what you were doing and that you had almost like stuck yourself or gotten stuck inside of this thing that was a high level, but it still wasn't high enough to make you feel like you were actually unlocking or unleashing your full potential through it?
Absolutely. And I was compromising big time because I was trying to play the game the way that everyone else was playing it, which is, intern at this place, put yourself in this place, volunteer with this organization, and maybe somebody will magically give you an opportunity from up above, right? And you're not like, that's not creating your own path. That's waiting for someone to give you something.
Yeah. I
And
think
most of the time, people will just give you the minimum.
yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, especially people above you, they don't want you to take their spot.
Whether it's unconscious or not. If you really want to unlock your potential and have all the sources that you need to realize your dream, like you can't wait for someone else to get it.
Yeah. I mean, I
Right.
think that's one of the biggest things too is that, people become like CEOs of companies and, and they get to these high level, high paying positions and then they don't really feel as good as they thought that they should have. And I think it's because, one, it's not necessarily that money is just part of a tool. It's a tool that you can use to like flex your freedom. But money, at the end of the day is just that. It's just a tool. It doesn't say anything about your actual life. And I think that people think that they're going to get money or they're going to get a position of authority or they're going to get, something that's going to look good to the outside world. And they're going to think because of this, I'm more free because I'm higher up on the, on the ladder or whatever. But really, at the end of the day, all humans want to do, I mean, regardless of whether it's, paying $1 million a year or, $500,000 a year or, $70,000 a year, it's the fact that you have control over your own life and that you can do what you want to do. Because I've heard it, especially nowadays, since these like side hustles and whatever have been taking off. I've seen so many people to say that they would way rather take a pay hit and be able to, do something like food delivery than to have to, have 1.5 times that amount, but have to listen to a boss or a company that doesn't care about them or, not have any control over their own life. Like they just love the freedom. And I think at the end of the day, regardless of what position you're in, if somebody's over your head, if you are in a position where you don't get to do things your way, even if it's a business you set up for yourself, it's going to feel limiting. You're going to want to break out of that.
Yeah. And, I think part of this round of ego death was not only realizing that I was compromising that, but that uh I had an underlying limiting belief that I was not valuable.
Hmm.
I was not worthy of other people's, or not even other people. I was not worthy of pay, or I was not worthy of acknowledgement, recognition, or worthy of my own opinion, even. Right. I had played so small and I had shrunk myself so to such a little person that I felt just really trapped.
Mhm.
And it took a decision to put myself first, which is really hard for someone who's lived their entire life pretty much operating on I'm not enough,
Yeah.
which is so cliche, but
And
it's so
sometimes you feel
hard.
like you feel mean. I don't know if you went through that, but sometimes you can feel mean when you start living for yourself. You feel
Yeah.
like selfish and like you're hurting other people's feelings and not, it's like it's so strange that like loving yourself in this society can make people feel negative.
Yeah. Well, because I had to, I basically what I gave up was like all the, working under people. I was supporting other people's dreams. And to say no to that, it is kind of heartbreaking, to an extent, because like you thought that I thought I was doing a noble thing.
Hmm.
But I was hurting myself by continuously doing that and putting my dreams on hold.
Yeah. And that's the thing, you're helping somebody else achieve their dreams, but if they're holding you back, then they have to know that you've already dedicated some time and energy away from your dreams to help them. And I think it's their turn, to support you and support your dreams and let you go on your own or whatever.
Yeah.
And even support you, if they can. I mean, a lot of bosses aren't going to, but
Yeah.
if
But yeah, and I've been lucky that I do have people in my life who have been like, "Hey, I need to go do my own thing now," and they've been super respectful. And then there have been people who have been super just like they dropped off the face of the earth after
oh, yeah.
I,
I've
right?
had people that just don't talk to me anymore. They thought that it's so weird because sometimes people take pride in fast food places too. Like, like, oh, you're just gonna leave us like that? Yeah, it's a fast food place. It's like I'm like 20 years old. I'm not gonna stay here forever. I have things to do. Like, don't try to guilt me
Yeah.
back into like making hamburgers.
Yeah.
That's,
And
that's funny.
yeah, and there's always going to be that there's always going to be that like people are going to try to guilt you into staying in where you're at because they're staying at where they're at.
Oh, that yeah, that's a big one. That's
Yeah.
that's what it is. People, it's a projection. It's what we realize is when it comes to projection is that people will talk to you the way that they talk to that voice in themselves. So
Yeah.
they're not necessarily talking to you. They don't even have to know you. But when you say a certain set of things that sounds like something that their brain has said, they're going to tell you what they tell their brain. That's stupid. Don't go do that because at the end of the day, everybody wants to remain in this homeostasis. That's where our brains want to be. We, regardless of whether you hit absolute fucking rock bottom and went homeless, or whether you became a multimillionaire overnight, within 6 months of experiencing either one of those lives, your brain is going to get back to where this is just another Tuesday, not a big deal. Like, so what we do is in order to keep that in line, we can't allow ourselves to think strongly about two different things. Like if you've heard of cognitive dissonance, I mean that's
Yeah.
that's what it's basically called. Is when you think two things almost equally powerful, it'll drive you nuts. And so because that's the main cause of stress, and because stress does such a damage to our body, our brain does everything it can to make sure that we can come to a decision regardless of which one it is. And most people, because they don't feel that thing that we feel, they're going to pick the one that to them is the more realistic option you
Yeah.
know so it's like you may feel, or somebody may feel like they want to go to LA to become an actress, or movie star or musician or whatever it is. A lot of people do that. That's what the majority of people do. They have that calling to them. And then some people, obviously will stay in their little hometown and they won't leave. They'll never move because to them, when they hear about somebody going off to be an actress or a movie star or something, they're thinking that's just stuff we see on TV. That's stupid. That's just a dream. That's unrealistic. That's like me wanting to be a multi-billionaire. Like who doesn't? But I'm not going to spend any time or effort actually going to try to do that because that's dumb. That's not something most people do. So they prefer to just stay in their hometown, sit in their little small family. Nothing against it. It's a really good simple life. The only reason it's a problem is because some people aren't aware that had they just changed their mind, they could be happier. And so they spend the most of their life not happy. So it's like you're projecting onto these people trying to ruin their dreams, but it's because you wanted that dream. You wanted that. You're not feeling fulfilled. So you should go do that thing.
Yeah. It's that listening to that inner voice, you know, a lot of people learn to just tune it out, I
Yeah.
think.
That's painful for people like us though. That's got that it's loud. That inner
Yeah.
voice will not let you.
Like last year when I contacted you, that was around the time where I had decided that I was going to close my office, you know? And I
Decision.
yeah, it was the right decision. People are like, "Oh, I feel so bad for you," or like, "You must be sad." It's like, I'm not sad about this.
Yeah, it's like I'm moving on to things.
Yeah. This
Got big
is
plans.
this was me putting me first
Yeah,
because I can't work for minimal pay. That my entire business model was based off of me feeling guilty for trying to help people and making a business off of it.
yeah,
And then what I realized over the past year and a half is that I need to not only do I have to pay rent, but I need to feed myself and I need to do all of this. And if I did all of that and I am making nothing so that I can, realize my full vision for one, like maybe I want a wellness center someday, or I want to cater like, wellness travel, all of those things need resources.
yeah.
People who
It's
are
a lot of
super
money.
successful have resources, right? They don't just play small because they feel bad about asking for money.
Yeah, I actually had a friend recently. Actually not recently. This last year before I decided to move away from LA. I had a call with him because he was moving to, I think he was moving to Bali or something. He was gonna move all his stuff online, focus on content creation and helping people and stuff like that. And I told him, before he moved, because we got to have the one last phone call. And he basically told me that my way of thinking, because I thought the same thing, I was like, the people that I want to help aren't people that have a lot of money. That's part of, their thing. It's like they have a lot of trauma, a lot of limiting beliefs, and so half the time they're not working at really good jobs. But what he said to me that really like stuck out is he said, even if you do want to help those people, who are who can't afford it, you can't afford to have those people. He said, but what it is if you start charging, money, at what you're worth basically, and you start pulling in clients that can pay it, after a while of making it, and let's say you do get something like a wellness center going, for example, now you have enough income that you can take time away from your center and go find these people. Now you can run a $10 a month, like mental health thing once a week, or one-on-one coaching for free, even if you needed to, because you don't need the money. You already have enough. You have an abundance.
Yeah.
And so it's like it's hard to start that small. You have to start actually being able to charge what you need, and then you can reach down further and further and further to people who can't afford it.
Yeah.
Like even things like Planet Fitness. Planet Fitness has to, they charge $10 a month, but it's like they have to maintain all of these large buildings. They had to, when they first initially started, they needed all the weights, they needed the brick and mortar stores, they needed the licenses, and you can't do that with 30 people, 300 to even 300 people paying $10 a month. You just
Yeah.
can't. But you can always lower it.
Yeah. It's so funny because I feel like people have been trying to tell this to me forever and it just didn't sink in until I actually felt the pain of not having anything
Mhm.
and not being able to help anybody, even when I had the business to help someone.
Yeah.
And
Can't pay your rent. Those people who
yeah,
are still in need, you can't reach you.
this is like probably about over 10 years ago now, maybe 12 or so years ago, and I was going to grad school in New York City. I ran into a classmate of mine from my undergrad, and she's doing really well for herself, but she had also gone to like volunteer and abroad and all of this stuff. And I was struggling at the time, even more so than I was now. And she said something like, "You can't help the poor if you're one of them."
Yeah,
Right.
that's true.
And it didn't sink in. It didn't sink in for a long time. And it has resonated in my head over the years. But I finally realized the impact of that, of like having
That's
scarcity
called
mindset.
planting the seed, because
Yeah.
it did think it was I was wasn't arguing with him, but I was definitely against him at first because he was also charging these thousands of dollars, a month or whatever. And I was like, I just can't justify that. He was like, well, you have to make a product that's worth that much and attract those people. then you can, because basically either they're not going to reach you because you're one of them, like, that person was saying, you know, or basically either way, you're not going to reach them. The only way to reach them is to have enough money to be able to afford to go reach them. It's like if you don't make it, if you don't charge enough from the beginning, you're going to shut down and then they'll never have access to you.
Yeah.
So you have to get to a point where they can access you.
I think
You know,
that's a conundrum with a lot of people who are in the, wellness space, I think especially, is that we really do care.
yeah,
We
that's why
care
it's
a
hard
lot.
about these seminar prices. Like, if I have a huge foundation, I'm not gonna charge it. I'm gonna have seminars for cheap. I'm gonna, I would want to go into like more poor neighborhoods and really help. Like one of the ideas that I had actually, and this actually just made me think of this. I need to write this down actually because I forgot to put it in my notes. But just like how church has like congregations, like that are free. You go to a building, you sit there, there's a guy up there, he's talking to people, he makes people feel good, and it's free. You go to church for free, and so you don't really have to pay anything to go to church. But seminars cost so much money, and I always thought it would be such a good idea to have a smaller building in a neighborhood or something like that, and it'd be similar to church, but for people for success in their life, in the standpoint of like business seminars or mental health seminars. People who, it can reach out to people of multiple religions or people who are just not religious at all. It can reach out to people who are just struggling financially or socially or whatever it is. But we could have different lessons each week. We could have people. We could, if like I said, if we had extra money, you can pay people to come in and then they'll have a seminar. You'll pay them their seminar price, but nobody in that building has to actually pay for that. They can just say, man, I'm down on my money this week. They're having a congregation this, week down here at this whatever hall, and we'll just go in and there's a guy talking. Maybe he'll help us with our money. Maybe he'll help us with our mental health this week, whatever it is. Like, I just thought that'd be a cool idea for the community to come together and just really like lift each other up in a solidified like public space.
Yeah. I think that there is definitely a lot out there if you look for it. Although in your community, you might have to be the one to
Yeah,
start it.
well, I've never seen that happen before. Every time I see a seminar, it's always expensive. Like I've always wanted it to be a free thing,
Yeah.
that I just think it'd be cool. Like people can get up and go to church for their spiritual well-being, but they can't go anywhere for their financial well-being, and that's the thing that's really holding them back sometimes. Or their psychological, trauma or whatever that they're dealing with. It's like you have to pay so much for a therapist, you have to pay so much for a financial coach, you've got to pay so much for a physical therapist or a personal trainer, you got to pay so much for all these things to better yourself. Church is free, obviously. The internal is where it starts, but it's like nothing's going to give me money to do it. It's like, but if you actually had that happening every week, cycling through events, I mean, I think it'd be amazing. You could have a 3 hour program, a body, mind, spirit. Every hour is one of the differences, and just better people every week and give them, just help them get a way out. AI is getting very powerful, and we're at a point now where we don't need AI to be used to doing art. We need AI to be doing the jobs that people can be replaced doing. We should be creating art. We should be drawing and painting and expressing ourselves. And AI should be the ones that's running the machinery in the background, making sure that that's possible.
Mhm.
Because why are those guys still, I saw this on the podcast the other day, why are there people still working in Amazon and then you got AI robots out here painting works of art? Like
Yeah.
that's not fair. Like we need to set ourselves up, so that we can actually live without having to be these cogs in a machine. We're not meant, I believe that we're not meant to live that way. I believe that humans, we strive towards a certain way of life because that's our natural preferred way of life. That freedom is something that we all crave because that's something that we are. It's natural.
Yeah.
All these feelings and urges, they're natural. That's just what we want. Nobody wants to work a 9 to 5. It's not natural. And if you want to work a 9 to 5, you'd rather be working that 9 to 5 because it's something that you are doing. It's your business that you decided to set. You put your own hours out there, and maybe you'll work 70 hours naturally because that's who you are. But not everybody fits this 9 to 5 template.
Yeah.
This 8 hour work day, 40 hour work week. Not everybody fits that template, and I think it's draining us spiritually. I really do.
Yeah. So there you have it. We're gonna wrap this up. And in terms of like, I think Kris is really setting this vision of lifting people up collectively. And so I really respect that vision. It takes a lot for sure for that to happen. But when we dream big, we can achieve bigger, right? So cool. Any last thoughts before we wrap it up?
No, just like you said, dream big, chase what you're after, and just bring into the world the things that you yourself want to see.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Thanks everyone for joining in. We'll see you next time.